hello, everyone, and welcome to Guardians of Recovery podcast, where we explore stories of hope, resilience, and all roads leading to recovery. I'm your host, Tina Olivero, and today we're diving into the paramount, most important conversation of sober living homes. Joining us is a very special guest, Earl Thiessen, who's the Executive Director of the Oxford House Foundation of Canada. So Earl is here to share his journey, his insights, and his critical role as in sober living homes as they support our communities. So Earl, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for the invitation, Tina. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's your experience and your lifelong commitment that's so important to get this conversation out there. So let's start with your personal journey, where it all began, and a bit about your own experience with recovery, and then how that led you into the Oxford House Foundation.
Okay, I'm actually coming up on 17 years sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was homeless for 7 years, addicted for 25.
Wow.
It's also, a lot of our stories are similar, right? It starts in early childhood, right? The way I grew up, in the 70s and 80s wasn't quite the same that it is now. But what was considered a spanking in my day is considered child abuse now. So,
right.
And I fully believe that my generation experienced a lot of trauma due to that.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, there's a lot more involved than that, right? I mean, I'm a survivor of pretty much every type of trauma you can name, right? Sexual, emotional, physical, and I say spiritual because I didn't grow up with my heritage. I am First Nations. I didn't grow up because my mom was ashamed of being Indigenous. It just wasn't looked upon favorably in the 60s and 70s. So,
Wow.
But that being said, I turned to drugs and alcohol to I call it an emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma, right? I didn't know how to deal with the multiple traumas I experienced emotionally, so I turned to drugs and alcohol to mask that pain.
Right, gotcha. And what was it like being homeless for, you said, 7 years?
Yes, it was. I was terrified, right? It was my oldest brother that had dropped me off. I pretty much burnt every bridge that I could. But he had dropped me off at the drop-in center. I was terrified, and the the unfortunate part is I fit in. I was terrified. I walked into the shelter, found a table, sat down, and I was home. It was really disheartening because that still happens now.
Yes.
A place of dysfunction is a place of comfort for somebody who's dysfunctional, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So it was, and everything, you learn how to survive, right? I tell everybody I have a 7-year education to do what I do now, because there is no, for what I do, the education I got on the street has well, I don't want to say paid off, but it helped my creativity in my mind and being able to see the gaps and what people experience to better suit the people that are seeking recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were your greatest insights in that period of time?
Regarding, you mean for recovery?
For recovery, yeah.
Well, there's lots of gaps. When one was the, and I work with city police and everything now, but one was the way that I guess you could say our marginalized population is treated by authority figures is not good. It's actually, to me, it's a human rights violation. But that being said, I'm sure that some of my behaviors didn't warranted getting hit, but warranted getting charged. But a lot of the things I saw when I sobered up, my partner was murdered in 2007. She was stabbed to death during a stabbing spree. uh,
Oh,
during
gosh.
COVID.
That's unimaginable, truly.
It wasn't what sent me into recovery, but it was a piece that played a part, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I dealt with it the only way I knew how, which was by drinking and drugging. But that being said, when I sobered up, I had I went up to detox, and that was November 13th, 2007. And I had went up to detox, and I got a treatment date for January. And
Wow.
being homeless, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I'm going to end up back in the same place I was before, and that's where the whole concept of pre-treatment housing came from,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And then also reconnecting to my roots and not having that space for to practice our culture, the smudging, right? The praying, having healing circles, stuff like that. It just it prompted me to develop peer and culturally supported Indigenous recovery housing.
Right. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So, and then, all of this led to your career at, the Oxford House Foundation. Tell us a little bit about viewers, a little bit about the Oxford House Foundation and what you guys achieved there.
We've primarily been for the most part long-term peer supported transitional housing, right, for people in recovery.
Right.
Uh, Saved my life. You're recovering with four other people. There's five people in a house here.
Okay.
You're recovering with four other like-minded individuals, right? And there's no end date on how long you can stay,
Hmm.
as long as you are, employed, going to school, doing aftercare, right? Those, you have to be active. You have to hit a couple recovery-based meetings a week just
Okay.
to keep your sobriety going. Once you stop, you're going to stall, and then you're going to take a step back, and then you may have a slip. So the basis is the peer support. Our residents look after the homes. There's a president, there's a secretary, there's a treasurer, chore coordinator, safety supervisor. Everybody has a role and a level of accountability to the
Right.
home and to your roommates and to yourself.
Right. Yeah. So you said four people in each home?
Five people in each house.
Four or five people.
Yeah.
Five people. Okay. And is there like a house captain living in the house as such?
Well, it's we call it the president. There is no boss. Everybody has an equal say, right? That's in long-term transitional.
Hmm.
In treatment housing, we do have a house lead,
Hmm.
but in transitional, everybody has the same voice.
Yeah, that's so important. So
Yeah.
you're creating community. And do you have like 12-step programs directly in the house, or do they go out for those?
Yeah, they have to go out. That's the level of accountability and getting them to, because when they move out into their own place, they're going to have to find their own support network through that. So we try and get them set up, right? We like everybody to have a sponsor,
Hmm.
just to have those multiple layers of support, right? We do have recovery coaches / support workers going around to the houses a few times a week just to, see if anybody needs a referral,
Yeah.
make sure everybody's doing okay, stuff like that, just to support the house. But primarily in transitional housing, the house supports the house, and we just oversee the operation. And if any emergencies or anything comes up, that's when we come into play.
And how many houses are there?
We have 27 in Alberta.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
So good. And Alberta's really leading the way when it comes to mental health addictions, recovery, and they've actually started to have the numbers decline when it comes to overdoses. So,
Yes.
this all seems like part of the great plan that they have to
Yeah.
make sure that that province actually does recover.
That's
Yeah,
the pre-treatment housing model. It's been open for 5 years,
right.
but we were supporting it for 3 years. The government, when the recovery-oriented system of care came into play in Alberta, the government, like I've had every from associate ministers to ministers through pre-treatment housing. And they see the impact that it has and the gap that it is filling. And
Yes.
now it's fully supported by the government. It's free to our clients coming through.
That is fantastic. My gosh, you guys are so inspiring. And just before the show, we were talking about, your own journey with this in your family, as I have. I've lost my son, Ben, to a fentanyl overdose, and it's affected your family members as well.
Yes.
And when that happens, you realize just how devastating all of this really is. And right now we have 44,000 people in Canada who have overdosed, and that's rising at a number of 20 to 24 people per day across this country. So this is not a provincial issue. It's a national issue that needs to be dealt with right now.
I agree 100%. And you're right, Alberta is leading the way. The system of care out here, and it took a couple of years, because I know there's been back and forth for the past couple of years that nothing was changing, but you can't put a time limit on recovery, right? The impact that these new programs are having are now starting to show.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why there's a decrease, 55% decrease of overdoses in the province.
Right. What do you do when someone relapses in your homes? How do they get back on track?
Well, I let my staff know, being homeless before, previously, I make a good, strong point that we do not evict into homelessness.
Right.
We have a good connection with some of the medical detoxes. Alpha House Detox here is actually one of our primary supporters when people do have a slip, or when people are coming into pre-treatment. But what we do is we make a phone call to the help team, and we get that person if they choose to do so. We don't force them to, right? And some people don't. They say, you know what? I've got a couple $100 left. I'm grabbing my backpack and I'm leaving. So be it. But we always present them with the option to go to detox, so a slip doesn't turn into a relapse.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so maybe unlike here, but detox is not readily available here. You have to wait days, sometimes weeks, even a month to get into detox. Is that the same way as it is in Alberta, or how is it there? Is there on-demand detox treatment?
Well, I don't know if I'd say on demand. It all depends on the relationship, because we have like 6 of them in our province.
Right.
Probably more. But just right in Calgary, there's 3.
Right.
And then right outside of town, there's another one. And then in Edmonton, there's a few. Right up north, there's a couple. But the biggest thing for me is with the detox now, because we say addiction is progressive. Well, so is recovery.
Right.
And we need medical detox. Detox doesn't. When I first detoxed to go to lay my partner at rest, I didn't go through medical detox, and I hit the ground. I had 2 grand mal seizures, and I chewed through a chunk of my tongue.
Wow.
So, and I was an everything addict, right? I was doing all the pharmaceuticals, alcohol, cocaine. But when a person is gonna starts a recovery journey, I think medical detox is important, because the withdrawals from opioids, even alcohol, is so powerful. I know people that have had heart attacks from their withdrawals.
Yeah, especially where their health is already compromised. Lots of times there's Hep C, HIV, all kinds of, all sorts of medical issues that come along with all of that. Yeah, it's a complicated set of variables. But I love that phrase that you said. We never evict into homelessness. That is so powerful. Yes. And the fact that everybody has a choice along the process, I think it also is so important. And then do you, in terms of people actually getting into your homes, do they have to have completed detox and rehab first?
It all depends on which model you're going into. If you're going into pre-treatment, we take them right out of detox.
Right.
We keep them safe, and we advocate for them to get into treatment centers across the province.
Right.
But for transitional housing, It's usually people coming out of treatment
Mm-hmm.
or people that have done completed a treatment stay in the past year,
Okay.
right? And we, I was a support worker for 8 years, so
Mm.
uh, we don't make that choice in transitional housing. Who moves in? We
Right.
give that power to the house. We do
Yeah.
an interview in office with the person, make sure they meet all the criteria and that they're actually on the right path. And then
Mm-hmm.
we send them to a home. The residents of that home interview them a second time and they decide if they move in.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like you guys definitely have it figured out there for sure.
28 years we've been around, so I think we got a good understanding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all this lived experience is really where the answers are, right?
100%. I was a resident, right? I was a resident. I
Mm-hmm.
changed the way that the house I was in operated, and the founder, Ron McMillan,
Mm-hmm.
asked if I'd be interested in working for the organization. That was in 2009. I
Yeah,
became executive director in 2019.
fascinating. And are you guys going to expand across the country or like, are you coming to Newfoundland?
I always say our name is the Oxford House Foundation of Canada. We should
Yeah,
be across the country, and
yeah.
and I'm a firm believer that if we don't have to invent the wheel, right? If
Yeah.
another province has similar housing or has the plan for similar housing, why
Hmm.
wouldn't we share our model with them just to
Exactly.
help people, right? It's not about us, it's about the people we serve. Our number one stakeholders are always the people we serve. When you move away from that, you're turning your nonprofit into a business.
Yeah, exactly and precisely. And this is has nothing to do with business. This is how do we, as quickly as possible, save as many people as we can from overdosing and dying, and create what I consider to be, and I see in the future, a culture of recovery. Like
Yes.
I see sober living cities, sober living homes, sober living cafes, sober, like an inclusive, sober culture in the same way that we did with, someone with a disability, for
Mm-hmm.
example. We have that same inclusive culture for addiction because there's just as many people, if not more, dealing with that.
Yeah.
So, why are we not architecting a culture that does have sobriety as a baseline? I mean, it makes perfect sense.
See, and they do. They've already built, I think, 4 or 5 recovery communities in Alberta,
Yeah.
and they're called therapeutic living units
Yes.
in prison to help support people. I mean, I was in jail, and there was a point when I was in there that if they're not saying that it would have changed, I don't want to. You can't predict the future, but I
Hmm.
know a couple of times when I was being released, I wanted recovery, and it wasn't
Right.
available.
Yeah.
So I think that's brilliant.
It is, yeah, therapeutic living units. Because, I mean, every person that I've seen come out of prison just went immediately straight back into addiction. And I've only been working in this area for, well, since Ben passed away a year ago. And I have not seen one person, come out of the system and not relapse, which
Mhm.
is, that's just really sad numbers. I mean,
And
people,
it's dangerous for people that are addicted to opioids. It's very dangerous when they come out of prison being, if they're off opiates for that long and they come out and they use, the overdose rate, I think, is 40% more
yeah,
for people coming out of prison.
because they don't have that tolerance built up anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, can you take us through how the Oxford House works on a day to day basis? When someone gets up in the morning, what's it like? What's their schedule? Do they have all kinds of activities? How does it foster recovery? How does it foster a healthy, mind, body, and spirit?
Well, it varies in every model, right? We were primarily for like 20 years just the one long-term transitional, but we've implemented a few other ones. So for a person, when I was a support worker, if I walked into a house and it was empty, that gave me a good feeling because I knew everybody was at work, everybody was in school, volunteering, doing meetings.
Hmm.
That's the basis of the long term. That's why we promote education. I'm a strong advocate for education
Right.
uh, and employment. Right? If you're gonna stay, you don't want to stay stuck.
Yeah.
So I mean, typical morning, typical day would be like any of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of meetings at night, but the majority are employed or in school, right? In
Mm-hmm.
pre-treatment housing, that's a little bit different because there is a clinical aspect to that. In
Right.
our 4 pre-treatment homes, we have 2 addictions counselors and 4 recovery coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So there is
That,
some psycho ed, there is some relapse prevention, there is some trigger work, right?
mm-hmm.
They go through that throughout the day. They go to a meeting every day. In
Yeah.
those, we had one of my board members, company that she works for Mullen Group, donated us a 15-person van. So all the houses, the men's houses go together, the ladies' house goes together, but all the houses go together to meetings every day. So
Wow.
it's quite structured in pre-treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's daily living routine in long-term transitional. In the indigenous, it's like long-term transitional, but there's also sharing circles. We have elders come in and do
Nice.
sharing circles once a month with the house. We're working on getting a grant for crafts and stuff, beading.
Yeah.
And then we do sweat lodges too.
Fantastic. That's what I was going to ask you next, really, was how important do you think spirituality is in all of this? Like you mentioned that you had lost touch with, your spiritual essence as a kid. And I'm just wondering how important you think that is and how you would put that back into the equation. What are the types of things that people would connect with in terms of their higher power in the 12-step program, for example, or like you said, sweat lodges, that sort of thing?
I think connection is everything when you're in recovery, right? The way I view it is when you're a young child, a young person, and you experience that trauma so severe that you disconnect from who you are and your being, right? When you start your recovery journey, you're starting to reconnect with who you are, right? and
Right.
and for me, that was my indigenous heritage. That was the missing piece. When I reconnected to my culture, I went to Sunrise Healing Lodge. When I reconnected with my culture, I just felt so at peace, right?
Mhm.
Good orderly direction, people say, for God, right? It's everybody has to have, or should have, I should say, not has to, a higher power that you're basing your life around. And my
Yeah.
culture was that for me, and that's why it was important to instill that in Oxford House, so people could have that same reconnection. When you reconnect to ceremony and everything, it's something else. When you're in that sweat lodge and you're
Yeah.
listening to the singing and it's pitch black, you are
Mhm.
in a different place, and that connection is to creators is so powerful. You just
Yeah.
walk out of that sweat lodge and you're ready to go. You just feel reborn. Well, that's what they say. It's the womb, right? When you come out,
Mhm.
you just feel reborn. It was I had a lot of help in there because I never, when my mom passed away, I was her caregiver, and I always wondered why my heart was so heavy, right? We
Mhm.
lose a loved one, obviously it's heavy, but it was just so powerful. Every
Right.
time I thought about her, I'd cry. A song would come on, I would cry. I know that happens to all of us, but it was really, really hard. And I
Mhm.
spoke to Hal in there, and he said, Earl, when was the last time you fed your mom's spirit? And I had
Mm.
never done that. So I did. I went down by Fish Creek, and it was Thanksgiving, and I brought a plate and my shell and my sage, and I sat down by the river and buried her food, and I prayed. Totally changed my outlook, right? My heart wasn't as heavy as anymore. I still honor my mom, of course, with everything that I do, but my
Mhm.
heart wasn't heavy. So he'd help me. You're never too old to learn. You're never too overeducated to learn. As soon as you stop learning, you stop growing.
Yeah, I love what you said too about bringing the elders into the equation. I mean, if there's anything that we should be doing with society is taking someone who's had a whole lifetime of experience and allowing them to teach our younger people. Like the wisdom of the elders is everything, really
Yes.
it is. And it doesn't matter if you're indigenous or not. Like our elders shouldn't be discarded for, a younger generation. It should be an
Mhm.
integration of the passing on of our knowledge, our culture, our spirituality, and all of that. And we have a big missing in society with all of that right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm. Cool. So interesting to hear about this. And of course, it's not all roses. What are some of the challenges you guys have had?
A lot of well, see, I've got a wait list for something I created for a wait list, and it's heartbreaking. We had 376 applications for pre-treatment in 3 months, and
Wow.
we could only help 81.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that the need is there. I
Hmm.
think we're on a good path, right? It's just it breaks my heart when I and you can't. The thing is you can't force people to recover. The justice system has been trying that for decades,
Right.
right? And in Alberta, they're saying Compassionate Care Act, and a
Mm.
lot of people are misinterpreting that to force treatment.
Yeah.
I think a way that stuff like that should happen is maybe mandated medical detox for 2 weeks, then
Mm.
give that person the choice to go
Yeah.
into recovery. It's free in Alberta. There's no charge for recovery here.
Right.
Right? You can go into a year-long program in one of the recovery communities, and it is free. So
Hmm.
I think getting a person to where they're coherent and then to make that choice is a good idea. But
Yeah.
to me, medical detox is a shortfall in every province across the country. Because
Hmm.
when a person takes that step
Yeah.
to start their recovery journey, it's you have to be
Right
safe.
in that moment, you need
Yeah,
to be that window of opportunity opens,
yeah.
and there's a moment of clarity. That's like the time to walk through the door.
Exactly. I mean, the stars really aligned for me because when I started my recovery journey, I always joke and say Calgary's finest knocked some sense into me, but I had went into the holding cells and I had 11 warrants for my arrest. And I
Mm.
went in front of the JP at 6 a.m. in the morning and he said, "Mr. Thiessen, you have 11 warrants for your arrest. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" And that was the first time I got honest. And I said, "Yes. I need help dealing with my trauma. I need help dealing with the murder of my partner. I need help dealing with my addictions." And he asked her name, and I told him Jackie Crazy Bull, and he had heard about it up in Edmonton.
Right.
So he gave me his condolences, and he said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to release you on your own recognizance." And that never happened to me before, right?
Wow.
He released me on my own recognizance that morning, November 13th, 2007. I limped up to Renfrew Recovery. My foot was broken. I limped up to Renfrew Recovery, and I got in, right. And then that's when I applied for treatment, and I got my date in January. And then I called a young lady, one of my saviors, Gwen, who was working at the Alpha House and Sunrise at the same time. And I said, "I don't know if I'm going to make it. If I don't get into treatment right away, I don't know, because I had OD'd multiple times, right?"
Hmm. Yeah.
I told her I didn't know if I was going to make it. And she said, "Don't panic. Just let me make a couple phone calls." And 5 days later, I was in treatment. And I wish it
Wow.
could be like that for everyone,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's such a deterrent when you don't, and you have to go back out to that same unsafe living
Hmm.
situation that you're in. So recovery housing, to me, doesn't have to be Oxford House. Just get lots of supportive recovery housing. It has to be managed properly.
Right.
Right? You
Yeah.
can't. When I developed pre-treatment, they said, "How are you putting 5 people into a home fresh out of detox and expecting success?"
Right.
And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, that'd be pretty foolish of me, wouldn't it, as a person in recovery?" So that's where the house lead, a person who had lived in Oxford House for at least 6 months, that's where a house lead comes into play,
Hmm.
right? And he monitors, makes sure everybody is safe and compliant. And we don't allow people to work. We don't allow people to go to school in pre-treatment.
Right.
We
Yeah.
want them to primarily get healthy,
Hmm.
get used to speaking in groups, and
Right.
start opening up, a little bit about their journey. We don't
Mhm.
do deep trauma therapy in pre-treatment, because that's a treatment center's job,
Right.
right?
Gotcha.
So, and then we get them in there. The success rate for our ladies is about 85%, and for the
Phenomenal.
men's is about 65.
Fantastic. Well,
And
we need,
that's huge, huge numbers. And these
yeah.
are people that are making it to treatment. I don't
Mhm.
count, these are honest stats. I don't count the people that leave and go back to their family and stay.
Right.
So that those aren't included in the stats. I don't doctor stats. That's misleading.
Mhm.
85 is a huge number,
It
and that's
is.
because of the collaboration with other treatment centers. And then
Mhm.
65 is also a huge number for men. We've got 3 men's home and 1 ladies home.
Okay, and so
And we're
they're
developing those
oh,
relationships.
right. Okay. So all of yours are women, men, no co-ed
No,
houses.
no, not until family housing starts.
Right. And how does family housing work?
Well, I've been sitting. That's been on the back burner for a couple of years because I fully believe that a family that heals together will break that cycle of addiction.
Right. Yeah,
Uh, it's really the safety is paramount, right? Because children are involved.
for
So
sure.
we have to make sure that everyone is safe. We're actually renovating a couple of the houses right now because I already have the property for that. I have a we have a fourplex with 2 3 bedroom, 2 2 bedroom. And a lot of people said, is it going to be for men or for women? It's going to be for everybody. Why
Yeah,
would I make that choice? It's going to be for families.
it's going to be for
Right.
families.
But I had to put that on hold because pre-treatment is such an important piece of the continuum of care. And my
Right.
staff, honestly, and myself, when we were developing this and implementing it, it burnt us all out. So I got to be really careful because
Mhm.
if my staff aren't healthy, then they're not healthy to help the people we serve, right? So I kind
For
of
sure.
put that on the back burner for a bit, and eventually we'll get it open.
One step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. And then, of course, well, it's such good timing because this morning I met with Minister John Abbott from here in Newfoundland and Labrador, Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. And for the first time, we are now putting out an expression of interest for sober living homes, recovery homes. And one of the topics that came up, of course, was mothers and children, which is so important. And my own personal philosophy is not to separate mother from her children, but to foster an environment of recovery and keep them together. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
there's actually that's you nailed it, right? You can't separate. There's actually a treatment center in Calgary here, Alcove, that
Al-
does take children and mothers together.
okay.
So, and I
Yes.
think that needs to be the norm across the country, right?
Yeah.
We can set the precedent in this in our country, in our provinces.
Hmm.
Everybody's watching, right? Everybody's watching Alberta to see what happens, and now they're seeing the results, right?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for, I love that the minister's involved, because if it government support is huge when
Yeah.
you're, and it to me it doesn't, whichever government, the
Mm.
government should be there support because the government works for the people,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So they should be supporting whichever organizations, or it's just huge. Government support is massive, and they have the power to make all the difference.
Yeah, they do. And when you have the municipalities on board, when you have the province, when you have the feds, then it all comes together. And there's like over 30 sober living cities and towns emerging around the world. And when you get all of the people together on the same table, and you can actually say, we're building a sober city, we're building a sober town, we're building a sober culture, now you're onto something because now you
Yeah,
have this inclusive society that says, hey, we're actually advocates for mind, body, and spirit working in unison to have a healthy population of people. Makes
exactly.
perfect sense.
100%. Well said.
Yeah. So, the other piece I wanted to ask you about was as you're building all of this out and you're choosing your locations, like I'm in the midst of putting together an expression of interest for our recovery home here now, and I'm looking at sites and locations. What do you think? Like, what have you found as the best sort of locations for your facilities?
Well, we have a definitely out of danger areas, right? Every city, every municipality knows where theirs are. So
Right.
definitely away from there. People can travel there, obviously. But if
Yeah.
it's, I mean, now in the way society is and the way it's taken, it's almost impossible to get away from. But when
Hmm.
you, I think, like we have in the Marlborough area of Calgary, there's 4 of our homes right in that area,
Right.
right? Homes interact with each other. It's almost like a circle, right? It's
Mhm.
you just have to get them away from danger areas. And I
Mhm.
would say one of the best things is grouping them in close proximity, not next door. Like we lucked out because the 2 of our homes that we own are next door to each other, and those are 2 men's pre-treatment homes that support each other. But
Fantastic.
a lot of our homes, none of them are way far out, an hour away, or they're all close to each other. So if there's help needed, that they can support each other.
Good to know. Okay. And one of the unique things about Oxford House is that residents take personal responsibility for their own recovery because, as we've seen in society, personal freedoms without personal responsibility leads to absolute chaos. And we're
Yeah.
seeing it time and time again. So, how do you build that infrastructure into your daily living process for the people
It's
that are there?
it's all accountability, right? They're adults.
Hmm.
Some people need some living skills, right? Daily life skills, how to cook and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
there's a high level of accountability, and the peer support aspect is what's changing lives. The best man at my wedding was my roommate in an Oxford house, right? You
Wow.
build those connections and those relationships with people in the home,
Yeah.
and then you just carry that on throughout your recovery, right? But
Yeah.
the accountability piece is huge
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
you that comes with you when you leave, right?
Yeah. Well, they become your family, right?
Hmm.
As
Exactly.
yeah, because you're recovering, you're coming. Like I look at addiction as nothing more than answering the question, who am I and why am I here? And when I look at it that way, I think, okay, well, I've recovered, and now how am I going to contribute to society? Well, I'm going to take
Hmm.
all of that experience and give it back and make a difference for another person.
Yeah.
And life comes alive in that scenario. And even though I myself personally am dealing with an absolute tragedy with the loss of my son, it's also given me a profound sense of purpose in
Hmm.
transforming all of this. Like nothing I have ever experienced in my life. So there is a on I can't even explain the I don't know if the word is passion, but it's a drive, and I guess it's a passion that has me say, how many people can I serve? How many people can I help today, so they don't experience what I went through? Because the level of pain I experienced, I cannot sleep at night thinking that that's happening to other people,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, one person at a time, right? It's a life of service, is what I call it. My whole professional life and beyond is a life of service, right? To people just like me.
Yeah,
I hand
yeah,
out more business cards to people on the street or through the Tim Hortons that I see than I do to professionals. And I just
right,
say, when you're ready, just throw this in your backpack. When you're ready, now you have a number. You can give me a call. I can get you into detox. I have housing. Whenever you're ready, you let me know and I'll start you off. I'll open up the doors, but you're walking through them. I'm not
wow,
doing the work for you. I'm not going to work harder on your recovery than you're willing to work, but I'll help
right,
guide you through the whole journey.
right. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Now let's take a broader look at the whole country, like Canada wide. We need all of this. So, how can we expand, facilities like Oxford House nationally? This is something that's critical to the backbone of our society succeeding. So, what's the plan?
You know how simple it would be to do this if the federal government, I mean, they hand out millions and millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, for
If
safe.
you could allot 10 million for each province,
Mhm.
probably within 2 years, the whole country would have pre and post treatment
Well,
from
that's what,
coast to coast, right? And I've helped people from coast to coast open up their own. I mean, to me, it doesn't have to be an Oxford house. It would be
right.
beautiful if it was, because
Hmm.
we have the model that's, long term. We've been around for 28 years. We could push that across the province.
Yeah.
It would just be, it would help so many people. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, some provinces, not all, privatize recovery and make a killing off it.
Right. Yeah.
And
That,
if this ever turned into a money thing for me, I'd be out.
yeah.
I'm not interested in that.
I
There
have
is
my,
no better equity than human life.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen like low barrier shelters paying $120 per person per night. They're making a killing. They call it nonprofit, but it's actually making more money than I've ever seen as a business owner in Newfoundland. And I don't agree with that. And it's same thing with the salaries. Like if you're in public service, serve the public. Nobody should be making, more than 50, 60 grand, no matter what, who they are. And if it was me, my model would be every single person makes the same amount. If you can live on 40, 50 grand, you're doing fantastic and you're being a huge contribution. And that's the baseline, like for everybody. Everybody's the same.
No, nobody gets into what we do to get rich, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are some treatment centers out there. Like we called in BC,
Yeah.
and it's $500 a day for detox, $300 a day for treatment.
Crazy.
There's from $30,000 to $50,000 for a treatment center.
Yeah.
Come on, that's
Yeah.
that's that's ridiculous. I don't believe in that at all. And to each their own. I'm not going to condemn somebody for doing that. But that's you're not in this to help people. Then you're in
Yeah.
this to make money.
I think it's immoral personally. I'll just put it out there. Let's call it what it is. Anyway, tell me about some inspiring personal transformation stories that you've seen coming up Oxford House.
Actually, all of my support staff are Oxford House alumni.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that would perfect
there's
sense.
there's
Yeah.
so many families getting to. There's no better success story than a family getting back together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting a phone call saying, "Hey, Earl, my wife's," just stuff like that is just, and it happens more. It's so common, but unfortunately, the way that society works, they don't want to hear the success stories.
Right.
They want to hear the bad news,
All the
and
poor.
that's horrible because there's so many successes out there, right? I
Hmm.
went from homelessness to executive director
Yeah.
of this organization. I created pre-treatment housing, right? I created the indigenous model. It's
Yeah.
just it's so there's so, and there's thousands of Earls out there, right?
Hmm.
But nobody hears about that. And I appreciate, when like I got the Queen Platinum Jubilee Medal for my journey and for what I do at Oxford House. That's great, but I don't do it for that. I do it because I love seeing people succeed.
Yeah.
Even somebody saying, "Hey, Earl, I haven't had a job in 10 years. I'm working now full time. I just got to," that's just a success. I'm going
Yeah.
back to university. I'm going back to school to finish my grade 12. That's a success.
Yeah.
Every little success like that is monumental
It is.
for people, right? So every little success is monumental, and they all need to be celebrated. We hand out birthday cards every month, and that's the highlight of my month at work. Because when I'm signing all them cards for people getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you add that all together, and it's
Hmm.
success across the board.
Yeah, you're making a true difference and you're a true inspiration. And the pains of your past have become the purpose of your future. And
Exactly.
it's changing so, so many lives. You're like this pebble going into a pond and it's just expanding out. And you're doing exactly what I envision, which is creating a recovery revolution for this country. And I can't thank you enough. So I hope that you feel, proud and recognized because we certainly appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm extremely humble. I have a hard time accepting comments. Just I don't know what it is. My wife says, "Really, should be proud of yourself." I am proud of myself, but I just I project outwards, I guess you could say. I love seeing other people succeed. But I am proud of what I went through. My mom, I hope I don't start crying. My mom, when I was on the street and everything, I was a caregiver for my mom for the last 3 years of her life. She passed away an alcoholic, and I found her body. But when I was on the street, both my parents said, Earl, there's one thing that we want to see before we leave this planet, and that's for you to get sober and change your life. And I said that because I gave my mom's eulogy, and that just came to me because my mom got that wish. She saw her boy. I'm the baby,
Yeah,
baby boy of the family, so she got to see her son change and actually make a difference. So that's one of the biggest things to me.
that's everything to a mother right there. Yeah, ugh, for sure. I can't even talk about it myself, but yeah. Anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, is there anything else that you want to say to our listeners? You're so inspiring. I can't wait to get the information you're going to send over to me. I hope to be able to adapt your level of thinking because I'm right on par with you. I'm totally where your level of thinking is definitely my shared vision. So I hope to learn from you. Perhaps you might be able to mentor me and to plug for myself. And show me the way because I'm going to do what you've done.
I will do anything I can do to help anyone. I just be the light, right? There's so much negativity in the world. It's
Yeah,
okay to smile. It's okay to say hi to somebody. It's okay to kneel down and speak to that person that's struggling.
yeah,
It's just be that person, right?
yeah, for
We all
sure.
have to think like that. It's just the more people come together to recovery, addiction, I should say, and recovery both. But
Hmm.
every family in some manner is affected by addiction.
Definitely.
And
Absolutely.
so why can't every family be affected by recovery as well?
Exactly. That's exactly what I say. In fact, the majority of people are going to be affected by recovery. That's if that's the last thing I do on this earth. That's exactly what I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish.
100%.
Okay, well, that's pretty much it for us for today. Thank you. And thank you to all
Excellent.
the listeners for tuning in. If for listeners, if you have someone that you love looking for support in the Alberta region, it's oxfordhouse.ca to
Yes.
learn about their Earl's incredible programs. So thanks again, Earl. You're a gem to speak with. You've touched, moved, and inspired me. So,
I appreciate
listeners,
it. Tina. Thank
stay
you.
tuned. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories on Guardians of Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Tina Olivero, forever in recovery. Over and out.